welcome to today's podcast. This is and the year is 1985. Today we're going to delve into some cherished memories, maybe some experiences. I'll be your host. My name is Sam Lane. We'll take a little trip down memory lane, see what it was like to grow up in a small town in Newfoundland, Canada. Bishop's Falls is a little small community right dead center of Newfoundland, right next to another place called Grand Falls, Windsor. It's a logging town. Mill was a big deal when I was a kid. They did paper. There's also a larger mill west, I guess, in Cornerbrook. That building that machine, I should say, provides paper for the New York Post, I guess it would be. Does newsprint paper. We'll begin today. We'll get into some stuff here. Let's talk about... like I say, I'm from a small town called Bishop's Falls. It's in Newfoundland, Canada. It's a cool little place. It's interesting to grow up there in the 90s. It was, when I was small, under 10, there was a lot of ma pa shop type stuff. Used to be a little convenience store, corner store, right behind my house. The whole dude that owned it, he owned it since my mom was a kid. She knew him for years and years. Just down the road was the same idea, El Toro Park. Shout out, El Toro Park. So there's a convenience store there. Same idea, ran by a couple of people my parents knew. Growing up, there was a pile of small engine clinics and what else? There's some thrift stores that opened up and closed. Mostly just people trying their hand, I guess. It's a small, kind of poor community. Not many millionaires from Bishop Falls. There's a couple, like everywhere, of course, but most people were average Joes, just working at the mill, or working at the corner store, working at the grocery store, that kind of thing. A very tight-knit community when I was a kid. I played a lot of hockey. My dad was my coach growing up. He coached me and my sister, which is fairly standard. A lot of people I know, their parents were involved in one way, shape, or form. Like I say, very small-knit, small community. Anybody who knows anything about Newfoundland will attest it's an interesting place to be, regardless of which community you come from. I enjoyed growing up there. It was great. There was a lot of fun to be had in those small communities. Some of the other stuff, was, there was, we grew up on a little street, a few avenues kind of thing, but there was tons of kids growing up. I remember we rode our bikes everywhere. We had these old skateboards we rode around on. Playing street hockey in the street. I guarantee people will remember that. The Street Warrior hockey pads and the Street Warrior glove and mitt. Glorious days. We ran those streets. It was amazing. There was lots of fun. People, kids. I remember being, 10 years old. There was kids from 10 years old to 20. Beating the streets, roaming around. The 90s was just a different animal. You were sent out early in the morning and you came back for lunch, you maybe came back for supper. It was fun. You got to do whatever you want a lot of the time. I know if any of my friends are listening to the podcast, they'll remember hanging out in the pig's pen, especially if you're, from our end of town kind of thing. They'll remember the pig's pen very well. Pig's pen essentially just being a giant open spot. It was supposed to be a graveyard, I believe, for the Catholic Church. That was right in front of it. So yeah, I believe that was the idea. I know recently it's been purchased by the town. But yeah, it was a big open spot. You could have a big fire and everybody dance around like animals and be crazy. There's also the rocks on the left side going in where we would hang out and have a cigarette maybe or something like that. There's trails everywhere. We rode our bikes. We used to play tag and manhunt and a couple other different games in there as well. So much fun. Ride our bikes. I remember I got some Radio Shack walkie-talkies for my birthday maybe or Christmas. I don't remember really, but one or the other, whatever it was. I want to say it was my birthday. Maybe I got them for graduating from grade 5 or 6, maybe something. I can't remember. But I remember having them. I remember being in the pig's pen. We used to ride around with those things on, and 2 guys would be the hunters, and everybody else would be on foot, but they would be in the bushes and whatever. But we'd have to ride around bikes and catch them. And I remember that was so fun. We thought we were FBI agents or CIA or something. Trying to catch our friends in the woods. Super fun. Super good memories. We played in there, man, from, I don't know, probably 5 years old until the day I basically left my town. It was, the pig's pen was a big deal from our end of town. It was right next to our school. We used to, sneak out there and smoke cigarettes and stuff on our lunch breaks and at recess and stuff like that. That was so much fun. Pig's pen. What fun. Lots of bad stuff went down there. It was all fun games, though. There was built a lot of cabins and stuff, too. All of our friends. We spent a lot of time building cabins up in the woods and stuff like that. I remember we were up there drinking one evening, and it might have been winter time or maybe fall, probably in the fall, probably October, November. And we had this big drum that we cut out, and this thing was like a 2-story cabin. We had like 30 guys that worked on it for all summer. We stole wood from everywhere. I won't talk about where or anything like that, might incriminate some people, but we may or may not have stolen some wood from some local places and things and stuff, and we built this big, huge cabin up in the woods, and it was 2 stories, but we had this drum. We cut it open, made it into a wood stove, and we were up there drinking. There's probably 50 of us up in that place, getting on like hooligans and ranting and raving, and being teenagers and whatever. And I remember we started the fire, and the stove got so hot it actually caught the cabin on fire. And I remember people screaming and yelling that we should, get out, get down, everybody needs to get out. But, nobody moved, nobody did anything. It was funny. And then, of course, people running out screaming. We got a couple of my buddies hooting and hollering, we got to get out of here, Everybody run, there's a fucking fire, let's go. And, being teenagers and drunk and everything, of course, everybody comes wandering down the steps, not realizing that the entire wall's on fire. But, that was funny. But, that was a very common thing. We probably burnt down 3 or 4 cabins. It's all fun and games until someone catches the cabin on fire. And I don't know, if you grew up in the 90s, the summers were endless summer days, beautiful. Summer holidays were the best. You get off in June, and through 2.5 months, 3 months kind of thing you'd have off were amazing. You couldn't believe you had that much time to yourself. Spend all day outside. It was amazing. I loved it. You weren't bored. You were bored, but it wasn't like bored like it is today. People can't put their phones down, People put, people with their phones, they just can't look away. But there was no phones, there was no internet really, there was nothing really like that. It was just, you'd get up in the morning, you'd, have your breakfast, watch some cartoons, watch some morning TV, maybe a bit of Maury Povich, maybe some Jerry, or whatever, time zone you're in. Whatever time you got up. I mean, you'd get up. 10 o'clock was my favorite time of day to wake up. 10 o'clock was like the greatest. I don't know why. Yeah, for perfect. I mean, I didn't go to bed till probably 3 or 4 in the morning either, which kind of probably turned it a little on its head. But yeah, I mean, it was just, you'd get up, have your breakfast, watch some TV, you'd leave. I mean, I'd jump on when I got, 10, 11, we'd run over to my buddy Tube's house, bang on his door, we'd roll a smoke or two from Dolly and Jim's pile, maybe roll a couple smokes, take off, jump on our skateboards, take off down the road, grab a few buddies on the way. Of course, we'd end up at the skate courts, and anybody who knows anything about skate culture, I mean, it was big in the 90s. It came back and made its big returns, probably why it's big again now, or becoming big, or was big, whatever way you want to look at it. But yeah, we'd just skate down to the skate courts, which was an abandoned tennis court that was next to our local arena or stadium. And we hijacked that and turned it into our skate park. Started it with a couple of older guys, Nipper and those guys, and Smitty, and Rideout, and a couple of other guys. And those guys built some ramps and some boxes and put it down there. Out of their own money, their parents' money, who knows, wherever these things came from. Mr. Rideout, I'm sure, helped, and So we ended up with these few boxes and these few ramps. And it was all these older guys, like, they kind of. Smitty was probably from the 80s, I would assume. I don't even know how old this dude was. He lived across the trestle in a house across the trestle with no power. But he had a skateboard. I remember he used to put nudies on his deck with clear grip tape. Cut a picture of his favorite nudie that week or whatever and put it on. It was fucking hilarious. People thought he was crazy. It was so funny. It was pretty tame by comparison today. It's funny though. But yeah, those guys built up all these ramps and boxes, and we had this big long plastic rail that was so slippery you could, go 100 miles an hour across it. People, broke their elbows trying to board slide this thing. But I wasn't very old. I was only 11 probably when I started skating. Of course, this started up, my first cigarette, my first drink, first girlfriend, first kiss, all these things, right? The fun of the 90s. Hanging out at the skate park. Yeah, and eventually, as we got a little bit older, the skate park became like the mega hangout. That's where everybody came. And it just became this thing. Skate culture was a big deal, and skaters were cool, kind of, amongst the kids. It wasn't so much amongst the adults. We got tormented a lot. We got ridiculed, and we used to call them skeets from Central. Skeets when I moved to St. John's was a little different, but skeets when I was in Central were the guys who rode around in their cars and, were into muscle cars and, dressed in their fitting clothes, went to the gym or whatever, Not even typical jocks, because a lot of these guys didn't play sports or anything like that. They were just in the cars, but yeah, they'd chase us around town in the cars, and sometimes they'd catch up to us and beat the living snot out of us, but that's all fun and games. Funny part is some of those guys were my buddies' older brothers, and they became skaters eventually, and that was kind of funny. So yeah, they stopped chasing us around eventually and became friendly. I even got one of them on a skateboard at one point. It was kind of funny. But yeah, the skate courts was a huge deal in our town growing up. For us kids, we hung out there every day. I mean, I was there from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the morning in the summertime till, I had to be home, basically. And like I said, as we got older, everybody kind of hung out there. Skateboarders were kind of the central fun. Being rebellious teenagers and skateboarders and drinking and smoking and partying, and you know, everybody kind of wanted in on that. So I feel like that was a fun moment in time for us. I mean, around this time too, you got to remember too, like Napster was a big deal. Music was becoming a lot more prevalent. Like, I mean, Woodstock '99. I mean, it was a shit show, but it was that was a collection, in my opinion, of the greatest music to come from that time. And to a certain degree, some people call it cheesy and whatever else. But I mean, as a person who came up through that era, 90% of the bands that were on that lineup were, huge influences on our generation, people that I know, our time frame. And they molded a lot of what became of, new stuff, new music, new culture, right? I mean, the 90s have kind of come back around as we're 30 years out kind of thing, But yeah, I mean, I feel like skateboarding and the music culture and like the internet, the rise of the internet during that time played a huge role in how the culture became what it was. Early 90s kind of started off as this kind of strange, I don't know, I was 5 years old in 1990. So it came off to me as a strange, neon colored, anything is possible, type of thing. It was when I was a kid, I mean, I thought anything was possible. Everything was new, and there was lots to discover, and technology was advancing in a more modern, more sensible pace, moderate pace, I guess. It was a bit more, you could catch up to it. It was a bit more sensible in that regard, right? But it definitely, by 2000, we were playing with a different deck of cards, really kind of thing, right? Like, I remember the first time I seen the internet, was in grade school in Hellentuck Elementary, where I went to grade school. Advanced school, like we had a Mac lab, and we had all this fancy equipment. I guess it was sponsored in the early days of Apple and stuff, but I remember Mr. Race, our music teacher, he, along with Mr. Hillier, Mike Hillier, shout out, buddy, if you're listening, if you ever hear this, you'll remember me well. We'll say that. Me and my buddy John got detention every day in grade 5, I remember that. You'll remember that. But yeah, they got, I remember they got this internet set up, and it was, basically set it up, and we were talking to these kids at this, I'm assuming, sponsored school or whatever in, I don't know, Africa or wherever this place was. But it was like still pictures, moving still pictures. So it would be like snapshots, and they would just go through snapshots, right? So you could hear them, but it was like broken radio, and then you would hear a couple of things, and then, you would get a new snapshot of them, and it would be, 35 seconds gone by, and it was blurry and whatever. But I mean, I remember thinking that was incredible. I couldn't believe that this was a thing that people could do, right? But yeah, like that was, game changing for me. Like it gave me immediate interest in new technology, and I mean, we had the Mac lab, and that was incredible. And then by the time, we started to get high-speed internet, and, Napster hit the scene, and, you could play online games and this type of thing. It was like groundbreaking, man. Like, it was, to me, it was a life-changing event. I mean, like, I remember being at Ryan Snow's, like, I wrote about this in my Substack, but I remember being at my friend Ryan Snow's house, and him showing me Napster, like, version 1.0, and being like, hey man, like, you can download any song you want. It takes a while, but you can download, you can get any music you want for free, right? And it wasn't for us about the free. It wasn't about the free. It was about the availability. Like, I'm from this place, there's no music stores. The closest music store is 3.5 hours away. Yeah, so I mean, like we were saying, it was availability. It was the exposure. It was the excitement of something new. It was amazing, right? Like, yeah, I don't know how to explain that. Like, in a without someone being there and seeing that, and like, I know a lot of my friends feel that way, or at least, will tell you they feel that way, whether it's true or not. But Napster changed a lot of shit, man. Like, I mean, the fact you could, we could get the skate videos like online. We could download like 411s and watch them. Where like, I mean, you could order them from Ballistic, but I mean that was from St. John's, and it was 5.5 hours away, and they had to get it, and it wasn't so simple, right? Yeah, and I mean, it just shaped our taste, and I mean, then you got, for us it was Much Music, not MTV. I mean, we're from, I'm from Canada, obviously, but just that, I mean, that was amazing as well, right? Like the up and coming, convergence of video and Napster all in one swoop, right? Just game changing shit for us, like game changing, right? And I mean it just turned us on to so much stuff, right? And then Much Music being based out of Toronto and it wasn't an LA thing or a New York thing. It was something that we kind of latched onto. And as like a person who was into music and skateboarding, and I even I play music and these types of things. It was insane moment in time, and it just I don't know how to explain it to people, and how remarkable of a moment that was. It's a shame that it spawned what we now see as streaming and all these things, which I mean, yes, is great convenience and all these other things, but kind of changed the way that music is kind of how people devour it and how people get into it and whatever. I mean, who knows? It's just the newest coolest thing or whatever. Who knows? Like, vinyl's huge again. Who knows? CDs are getting big again. Whatever. But it was to me, like, the people who didn't grow up in the 90s don't realize or don't see it in its true effect. Like, I know we're kind of looked at as like how we looked at the 60s in a way, and how game-changing things were from that point of view, from their generation. Now, we're kind of looked at in that regard from the younger generation as well. I'm 37, it's going to be 38 here coming up. I got a 17-year-old stepkid. I've got a 4-year-old boy. The things that they're seeing are just, leaps and bounds. And, it's just craziness what goes on between what I remember as, being their age and now where we are now. But yeah, I mean, like the convergence of like the skateboarding culture, Napster, that type of thing coming around, online gaming. It was magical. It was magic, right? Like playing Diablo with my friends online. And you knew it was your friend playing with you, but they weren't in the room. That was amazing. Especially being from a small town, that's another thing people don't really take into account when they, go back to that time. Is there's not a lot of exposure. I mean, there was not many other ethnicities in my town. There wasn't a lot of diversity in any way. I mean, we kind of, because we could see what was going on around the world versus just what was in our own yard, I think it made us a little bit different than previous generations. I mean, a lot of us, and I know, we rubbed off on each other, I guess, but I mean, we all kind of had our own funny style. Everybody, we all dyed our hair funny colors and did whatever, right? Like, everybody's striving to be different in this little, what we thought at the time, this shithole community that was, so bland and blah. But we were influenced so much by all these other things that I don't think other generations previous to us didn't really get a chance to see. I mean, I could log in on the internet, and I mean, I could go look at anything I want. I could see any community, any other place in the world. I could look at, anything that they wanted, any of their belief systems. I could look into what was popular in their areas. I could look at the clothes, the music. I heard music from different countries that would never have come my way. All these things, right? Yeah, I mean, there was a sense of like exploration and freedom that was with that. I mean, it was cool. It was very cool, right? And I mean, so you take into account, movies. Movies were a huge deal. TV was a huge deal. This stuff was becoming a bit more international. It wasn't just the odd film that your little theater could get, or you only had 2 stations. We finally had multiple stations. You had the classic channel guide that floated. You'd just sit there and wait for your channel to come by and see what was coming on. It only give you 2 hours in advance, so you got 4 shows worth of advance, right? So to see what was coming on. It was that kind of a thing, right? But that was like crazy. That was crazy. Like, I mean, the first time I got an interactive guide that I could press up and down and sift through and look at, and I had control over, was like, you couldn't believe it. It was a lot more. Like I said, I don't know. Everything felt adventurous. Everything felt adventurous. And, we were all kind of latchkey kids to a certain degree. Like, the doors were always open. I came home from school by myself or with my sister, and, there was nobody there sometimes, or maybe there was. And, I mean, a lot of kids I know just went home and waited for their parents to get off work at 5 o'clock, and during the day, summertime, I mean, my dad worked away from time to time, and mom worked a full-time job. So, the house was just left to us, kind of thing. And, there was a lot of freedom in that. And then, I mean, of course, it's not like it is now. People are afraid of everybody and everything. So, I mean, we used to sleep in tents outside, in our backyards. And I mean, there'd probably be 50 people doing the same thing. So you'd like get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, ride your bike around town with like 10 other youngsters and, get into mischief, maybe go start a fire somewhere or whatever, like it was crazy, right? Like compared to what it is now. And I mean, people say, oh, it's not safe anymore. It's not safe anymore, but it's, it is safe. It's definitely, I don't know if it's safer than it was then or more or less or anything really, but, that's how I grew up. That's how a lot of my friends grew up. We were allowed to do whatever we wanted after supper kind of thing. And then, I mean, like, my parents had an old truck camper that they had in the yard. Dad just kind of sealed it up and made it good enough to sit there. But me and my friend Jason Cook, I mean, we slept in that thing, man. Every day of summer, for summers on end. I mean, we had a rand extension cord out, and we had a couple outlets out there. We plugged in an old TV and an old VCR, and we had our Super Nintendo, and I mean, it was the best of times, man. We were kings, right? We lived in this little camper, basically. I mean, we slept in, we came and went as we wanted. My parents gave us basically free reign of the cupboard. So you just eat whatever you want. And that was fun. That was awesome. It was different, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was great memories, man. Great memories. Great times, great memories. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has something similar like this, right? Like, that camper was, like I say, and then, my cousin Alan John, he would come into town and he would sleep, stay with us and sleep, and we'd sleep in there with, we have 3 of us, and then we'd sleep in the house. My parents would go somewhere for a week, and then we'd pull everything into the house, and then we had access to the computer, and, eventually there was internet and whatever else, and we could sit and we could play, online games. And I remember, when Diablo came out, and I remember Age of Empires, and I remember all this, the Zone Gaming Network, and like playing Quake with my buddies, and just amazing. Like, it was just this excitement, man, the adventure, the fun of it all, right? And I mean, we slept in this camper, and then, you'd get up in the middle of the night and we'd leave. I remember, John would get on bikes, man, and we were riding bikes to the other end of town, middle of the night, pouring rain, didn't matter. It was awesome. We just were free to be kids, right? Never had no worries, in that regard. There was no Chester molester going to get you, none of that kind of shit. And we were a little tough anyway, right? That's how we thought we were anyway. So we weren't really scared, and it was just different. It was a different time, man. Small town. is different. And I mean, people say, oh, you know, there's lots to do with when it comes to, you know, big city stuff, and you got in lots of trouble and this and that, whatever. Had lots of fun. And I mean, it's fun everywhere, but something about small towns just different. I mean, you know, you jump off the trestle, man, into the river. Like, I wouldn't think about doing that now, but I mean, you know, as a kid, that was crazy. Then, you know, take your bike to, you know, like Jumpers Brook, or go up to pine camps on your bike, and you'd be riding through the woods for an hour, and you finally get there, and you'd slouse in the water, and it'd be like, oh, this is amazing, right? Like, you spend a day, I mean, you'd be hanging out with your buddies, maybe there'd be some girls or whatever, right? And you'd be hanging out at, you know, in the water all day, and, you know, you might have brought a sandwich with you or whatever, but it didn't matter, and it was an amazing time, man. It was freedom, you know, and that's something, like, bikes to me are like the classic 80s, 90s kids. Like, everybody rode their bikes everywhere. There was bikes parked out in front of people's houses, you know, like, you go, like, where I say, to the skate courts, and there'd be bikes parked all along the hill, and yeah, it was just, I don't know, man, different time, right? And, you know, it was just fun. It was just super fun. And it was easier, simpler, but exciting. Like, you know, comedy, TV, that kind of stuff was a little more rude, a little more crude, a little more adventurous, a little more in your face. MTV spurred, you know, that punk rock attitude kind of a thing. And that trickled into, you know, us, and you know, you're influenced by so many more things by comparison to, you know, your parents, or like even, you know, a person that was 5 years, 6 years older than me. You know, but, you know, you take Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead and like South Park kicked off, you know, like those types of shows didn't exist before MTV and, you know, much music, and it was a golden age for that type of thing. I mean, and, you know, you had movies like Austin Powers and this kind of stuff that would be, you know, in that lewd, rude, crude kind of place, you know, and then you had a lot of slasher movies and a lot of horror films and a lot of movies based around, you know, like the unknown and spiritualism and religion and this type of, you know, that type of thing. It was really interesting. I mean, like, X-Files was a huge television show, and like Unsolved Mysteries, you know, this type of thing. And I mean, I'm still interested in all the. I mean, it's probably the reason I am the way. Half of the reason why I am the way I am. You know, and there's all these kind of documentaries about Bigfoot and the Bermuda Triangle and UFOs, and oh man, like, it was just an interesting time. And like, there were, you know, even with the internet, there were still magazines. Like, I remember X Factor magazine was awesome. Like, I mean, every you know, volume would be different or whatever, right? Like, it was, you get one that would be, you know, ancient Egypt, and the next one would be UFOs, and then it would be mummies, and then, you know, whatever. Like, it was, yeah, I like, there was this weird 90s obsession with these kind of like unknown things. Something else, you know, I write about in my Substack, like, it got me really into, you know, religion and belief systems, and not fully trusting everything you see or hear. And, you know, it's, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, there's some of my friends will, you know, test, you know, you're a bit of a conspiracy theorist, Sam. And I was like, yes, but I, like, probably am, and that's okay, right? Like, it's part of the 90s thing. Like, it was ingrained in me and a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know, and a lot of people that I've met along the way that are my age. You know, like, we kind of have this weird thing where it comes to conspiracies and, you know, whatever, right? Everybody's kind of a little bit twisted kind of thing, right? But there was a weird moment where, like, you know, you get really classic, you know, horror movies and this type of thing, but you'd also get a really crude, you know, comedy film. And it was different, you know, like Freddy Got Fingered and stuff. You know, it was just different. It was a weird time to be around, and weird, interesting time to, you know, watch movies and be in the theater. And this kind of thing, like, and of course, VHS and DVD home video was a big deal. I mean, like the theater, or VHS player would, like I had it on flat out. I mean, it would be recording stuff from TV. If it wasn't music videos, it was movies. If it wasn't movies, it was television shows. And I mean, we'd rent movies, we'd rent 5 movies every weekend. And it was, I mean, we spent our time outside, obviously. I mean, we were kicked out most days, first thing in the morning, and not let back in until supper time kind of thing. But yeah, it was just different, man. Just different time. I mean, same thing, like you take into account your community kind of connections, and, there was a lot more community involvement, a lot more people, a lot more stuff to do with communities, because it's easier to organize in a smaller town, I guess. I mean, I'm not into politics in that way. I don't organize community events in any way, but I imagine it'd be easier in a smaller town. But I mean, I remember, you'd have 3 or 4 events during the summer, and then you'd have some kind of winter carnival, and there'd be dances all the time. And like I say, it was just a different time. Like the teeny bopper dances. I remember being at dances by myself. I was 6, 7, 8 years old. They dropped off by your parents from at the Lions Club, and you can go off. And I mean, these were like fundraising events. I mean, you pay $2 at the door to get in or whatever. And, you got a pop or whatever. And you got to dance with one of the girls, and life was good, right? Simple, but good. But it was a bit more community oriented in those days, I think, and it's coming back a little bit now. I know, like a lot of my, I live in Alberta and in a bigger community and whatever, and I mean it's a great town and whatever, and I know people are my age are now coming into these positions of power where they can arrange for these community type stuff, right? So I know that's gonna, that's coming, and I know home too, in my hometown, it's that stuff has become a little more prevalent, a little easier to deal with, and because I think it's, our generation was raised on that kind of ethos that, you help out your community and you that type of thing, and hopefully it's, it sticks around. It's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, there was always something going on. I mean, even when we got older, we used to put off our own little music events, and I mean, we would, go to the park, and we would get the stage, and we'd rent the gear and hire security, and I mean, we would help out, get, bands and local bands, to have shows. And I remember, we helped get a few shows off the ground at the stadium, and, we would do that kind of stuff, and we would hold skate demos and this kind of stuff, right? Like a little bit different. I mean, you don't hear too much about that kind of stuff anymore. It's a shame, really. Everybody wants to do like an online easy event where you can just, donate your money or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that either, but it's not engaging in terms of the community. It doesn't get any young people involved. But that was a big thing when I was, in the 90s, I feel like was a big deal. So probably, just probably end it around here, somewhere in that area, right? I'm not sure what everybody else's opinion of the 90s are, but I mean, I believe it was it was one of the better generations of the last few years. I mean, we had our ups and downs. We've had, there's some trickery and there's some weird stuff that went on, but for the most part, I mean, the 90s were pretty chill and, great memories, and it was a fascinating time, and there was a lot of advancement, not just technological, but sociological. And I mean, I feel it's we could take some touchstones from the 90s and bring those things forward, right? I feel it was a bit more of an accepting time, not necessarily from the older generation around us, but the generation, like my generation that was coming through. I feel like it was we're a lot more rational than people give us credit for. I believe people say, we're millennials and this and that and whatever, but not all of us are, I wouldn't say the majority of us even fall into that category. Like, there's a strange age group born between, 83 and 87 kind of thing that we've seen a lot of interesting stuff, and we're kind of in the middle of everything. We got Gen X qualities, we got millennial qualities, we've got boomer qualities in reality, right? Like, we were raised by tail end boomers mostly, and, you know, our grandparents were, you know, either boomer, like, you know, first boomers, or, you know, the generation prior, right? Raised with different set of, you know, ethos, and, you know, taking a hint from punk rock, from, you know, from the 80s generation, and then, you know, incorporating our own little thing in there. I mean, even at 40 years old almost here, like, I'm, you know, I feel like I'm a lot more technologically inclined than even the, you know, 20-odd-year-olds to these days. Like, there's no, it's that discovery. I love finding new stuff, right? I feel like this is all part of, like, there's a difference there. There's a difference with this, you know, 5-year span, and people of my age bracket exactly, in my friend group, grew up in, and it molded us and morphed us in a special way that makes us a little different, I feel like, than everybody else, right? And it's, it holds, the 90s holds serious nostalgia for me. It was, you know, the greatest time. It was the greatest time, right? You know, the lead into the millennium, that was crazy. Y2K lead up was crazy. Like, there was just excitement. There was electricity in the air, and it wasn't negative. Whereas I feel like it's, you know, with the advent of social media and everybody buying in and everybody checking in, it's ruined a lot of the stuff that the 90s brought forward, brought to light, and brought in, you know, that influenced us and stuff, and we're losing a lot of that, I feel like. And I mean, it's for the good or for the bad, I don't know, but I feel like that, you know, that excitement, that sense of adventure, that bit of freedom that the 90s gave is lost a little bit. And I know lots of people say that about their generation, you know, there was a certain amount of freedom that was lost, or whatever, in the following generations, or, you know, whatever way you look at that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I feel it's a special time, and I feel like, you know, it should be reviewed and it should be looked at closely, and so that's what we're going to do in this podcast here. We're just going to basically, you know, down the road, well, every week or every 10 days kind of thing, we're going to hit on a subject, and we're going to talk about it. I'm hoping that I'll get some of my friends involved and get them talking about, you know, their experience from their point of view, from the same place I'm from. Yeah, so I think, I think it'll be fun. I think we'll have some fun. Hopefully I'll get a little bit more comfortable with this stuff. I'll get a little bit more loose. We'll shoot for like 45 minute to an hour episodes. I'm hoping to have some fun with this. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, this is the first episode. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for whatever. Again, this will be shared, you know, hopefully to, you know, Spotify, Apple Music. Hopefully I'll get a copy of the Substack everywhere. If you want to follow me on Substack, it's the Tiny Head Man on Substack. Tiny Head Man, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Yeah, Spotify, whatever. We're just going to we're going to put it up under the years 1985, I believe, and we'll do it that way. But again, that's it for today's episode of, and this is 1985. Hope you enjoyed listening. Hope you enjoyed, you know, little anecdotes and some funny little tidbits and stories and whatever. So stay tuned for hopefully some interviews. Like I say, maybe we'll even get some videos hopefully soon. Of me and my buddies, whatever. Maybe I'll even get my parents involved. We'll see. But it should be fun. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening again. And this is the year 1985. Keep embracing the magic of the 90s. Bye-bye.